Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, Cyril Gerald Quinn. Recording this on a Tuesday as I look back at another wild NFL Sunday, a very interesting NFL Sunday, and certainly a couple things going on in the world of pop culture as well. Episode 969, How to Mess Up a Quarterback. And, these NFL franchises have made a history of messing up quarterbacks coming out of college. We'll discuss that with the deep dive. But we begin, as always, with the game of the week. Very, very easy choice for a week two. Kansas City taking out Cincinnati by the slimmest of margins, 26-25. Very good game from a tactical standpoint. It wasn't high-level football. Neither quarterback played particularly great, but just a high-level, intense chess match between Cincinnati's defense and Patrick Mahomes. This is the best rivalry in football. It really is. And I don't think it's close at this point, to be honest with you. These two teams in the last 6 games have been decided by a total of 22 points. Mahomes has not been great against Kansas City. Against Cincinnati. They don't shut him down, but they really, really know how to contain him and keep him from just going nuclear on them. Now he's found a way to win. Win some games against them. He's lost some games against them. This one certainly could have went either way. I could make a strong case that Cincinnati, frankly, slightly outplayed Kansas City. I'm not going to say they deserved to win the game, but Kansas City, again, just knows how to win. Like, they can win any which way possible. Very encouraged, though, by Cincinnati's play in terms of this game. Makes up, maybe not the win column, of course, but it makes up for what transpired in week one when they just looked, like a dead cow. Like, they looked horrible in week one. So I'm not concerned about Cincinnati. This is familiar territory for them. 0-2 for the third straight year. Now, again, keep this in mind. No team has made the playoffs starting out 0-2 in that third consecutive season. So keep that in mind. I think Cincinnati will buck that trend and end up still making the playoffs, and Kansas City keeps being Kansas City. Buckner, by the way, Harrison Buckner, putting his politics aside, is the best has taken the crown as the best kicker in football. He's better than Tucker right now. Like, if I had a game to win, life on the line, AFC Super Bowl AFC Championship, I'm taking Harrison Buckner. That guy has been money the last couple of years. You think about some of the big kicks he's made in the playoffs. So I think he's the best kicker right now in all of football. So excellent game. Again, very good game. Again, not a class. This wasn't a classic, but again, more about a tactical. It was kind of like a fun tactical game to watch. And both these two teams are going to meet again. I just feel I can't see a scenario where, unless if Mahomes and Burrow both stay healthy, where they don't meet again sometime in January. We're going to begin with one of the. There were a lot of shockers. Matter of fact, three of the shockers are on this board. I got to begin with the Cowboys. The Cowboys actually get their asses handed to them. 44-19. Was it? Yeah, 44-19. The Saints just completely, and I mean completely, take them behind the woodshed. It was beautiful to watch. Derek Carr looked like Tom Brady out there. And, the Saints, again, this game was over at halftime. You're talking about 35-16 at halftime. Dallas only scores 3 points in the second half. Normally, we've seen Dallas have these wild comebacks when they got down by a lot of points at home in the past. Not this time. Snaps Dallas' 16-game home winning streak in the regular season. They got smashed by the Packers at home. The last two games, right? The last two home games between this one and what transpired against Green Bay, Dallas has given up 86 points at home, 86. And I'm minus a pick six that happened against Green Bay. They've given up 86 points defensively. And this is supposed to be a top defense. Listen, here's what I wonder. Again, I'm not like I told you about Dallas coming into the season. I wasn't high on them. I almost don't take as much pleasure in this because it comes early in the season, and it's not like it's not in January or it's not them collapsing and missing the playoffs. So even though I loved every moment of it, it's almost happening too early. But here's what I wonder about before I get to the Saints real quick. I wonder about how great is Micah Parsons really? Now, you want to say like this, like, so what are you talking about? This guy is a sack machine. He could play him all over the place. One of the best athletes in the NFL. All those things are true. And trust me, anybody in the NFL would want Micah Parsons, Micah Parsons on their team. I definitely would take him on the Commanders without question. But sometimes when he makes plays, his name starts to get tossed in with. Forget about we know he's amongst the best defensive players in the league, but people tend to throw him in with some all-time greats. And it's like, again, we've seen him in the playoffs. He hasn't done anything in his playoffs in the postseason. And we've seen him in big spots get neutralized. Again, you're gonna pay him all the money. That's not even a question. I'm not even debating that. And I don't even think I'm not even gonna call him overrated. I just wonder sometimes when I watch a performance like this, and when you watch what happened in the playoffs in Green Bay, how great is he really? I mean, he could end up being this generation's J.J. Watt. Like J.J. Watt was 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Hall of Famer. I don't consider J.J. Watt is not one of the greatest defensive players of all time. I don't like. I'm sorry, he's not. Like, he's not Reggie White. He's not Lawrence Taylor. He's not Ryan Lott. He's not Bruce Smith. He's not on that level. There are tiers when we talk about all-time greatness. And I just wonder if Micah Parsons is going to be like this generation's J.J. Watt. I wonder about that. I think about that when I watch him play. Gaudy numbers, win a couple of defensive players of the year, but not impact winning to the level of those players that I mentioned. Again, Bruce Smith, Reggie White, Ronnie Lott. Something to keep your eye on. Just something to keep very much to keep your eye on. Listen, the Saints are just destroying it offensively. 91 points in their first 2 games. Derek Carr is playing extremely well. The Saints have some nice pieces. We forget how great Alvin Kamara can be. At one point, there was a time a couple of years ago where he clearly was the best back in football. He is an excellent all-around player, both receiving and running the ball. He was, probably the best player on the field. Sunday with the 4 touchdowns. Saints have some nice pieces. I'm not ready to go all in on the Saints as far as, look out for the Saints. They could be a contender in the NFC. I'm not quite there yet, but they certainly are going to be amongst the playoff contenders. They certainly could make the playoffs. Like they're in that conversation, but I'm holding back as of yet to see where, are they an upper echelon contender in the AFC? I'll hold judgment on that after a few more weeks. But again, excited. You have to be excited if you're a Saints fan. They've been spectacular through the first 2 games. Have handled their business. Great, and certainly a great divisional. A great interconference, a great conference win, beating Dallas in Dallas. San Francisco falls to Minnesota. Another baffling loss. Minnesota, again, you're talking about having Sam Darnold as your quarterback. He's a veteran, has been a mediocre journeyman. Forget about, the number 1 pick and all that stuff where I don't know if he was number 1 or number 2. I think he might have been number 2. He was a top 2 pick at one point a long time ago, but even has been, again, even a mediocre backup. And he goes in there, plays well enough to push Minnesota over to have Minnesota take out San Francisco in a game that, frankly, Minnesota was in control with from basically from start to finish. This was a wire victory for Minnesota. If it's not for a fumble, it would have been. It could have been worse, where they seemingly were going in for a touchdown before the player got stripped. That kept San Francisco within striking distance. Um, San Francisco has some issues. They give up 403 yards. Justin Jefferson was on pace for a 200-yard game. He left, he had a quad injury. He had a 97-yard touchdown. Ended up with four catches for 133 yards. I don't like how San Francisco has looked in the first 2 weeks. They beat a Jet team that, frankly, we know that the Jets are not that good. Played well enough in that game. But this game was This game is a game that you should not lose if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, contend for a Super Bowl. Like, you should not lose to a Minnesota team playing basically their second quarterback, a guy, and they don't. Minnesota has. Yeah, I know they have Jefferson, but they don't have. And there's no way that Minnesota should be able to run the ball. They had 146 yards rushing. It just shouldn't happen. And again, I think that this San Francisco defense is just not. This is not quite the defense that we've been accustomed to seeing over the course of the last few years when they've been Super Championship contenders. Again, I said coming into the year, keep your eye on San Francisco for having a letdown year for maybe all those years of getting close and not winning. It finally catches up to them, and they take a small step back. Now again, you still favor them in that division without question. I don't think the division is very strong, to be honest with you, but especially after what happened to the Rams, as they now fallen to 0-2. But I didn't like what I saw out of San Francisco. I'm a little bit concerned, not very, but somewhat concerned about them moving forward. And for those of you who want to rip Brock Purdy for not being able to pick up when he missing a star running back like Christian McCaffrey and be able to pick up the slack, and the defense not playing great, this was the game for you. Purdy was not good in this game. Had an interception, had one that wasn't called an interception where he lost control of the ball. So it really should have been 2 interceptions, but basically responsible for 2 turnovers, and just wasn't good in this game. But like Mason, another great game for him. He gives you 100 yards and a touchdown. So it's not like you miss McCaffrey from the running standpoint. Now, receiving McCaffrey is what separates McCaffrey from most running backs in this league. He's a great receiver as well. So, yes, you miss him, but Mason's been very good through the first 2 games. And to me, I don't think the defense is as good, and I think that there's just something missing with that team, some intangible that's missing with that team right now. So keep your eye on them. You can only knock on the door so many years before your window closes. Like it can close quickly in sports. We've seen it, especially in the NFL. The most baffling loss to me of this week, Baltimore and the Raiders. The Raiders are a bad football team. Make no mistake about it. Gardner Minshew is their starting quarterback. Okay. So Baltimore blows 2 10-point leads. They end up falling 26-23. Again, a just baffling loss, to say the least. At home, you're 0-1 to begin with. So it's like these are games that Baltimore last year would just run wild and it'd be 42-10. Like they didn't lose these types of games at home last season. Maybe in 2022, but not in 2023. They were absolutely really unbeatable at home. You get to 27 carries for 151 yards. You get Lamar Jackson only having 5 carries. I like that number. Jackson was okay throwing the ball. It was okay throwing the ball. To me, it was defensively. The Raiders couldn't do anything in the first half defensively. All of a sudden, they become, the 89 49ers in the second half. They bust loose. They only had 27 yards rushing. Adams had a big game. Minshew was okay, but it's a very strange loss for Baltimore. Like, this is one that you shouldn't lose this game. down, especially 0-1 at home in your home stadium, and with the schedule they have coming up now. And speaking of that, they're 0-2. They, first of all, Baltimore basically does not start out 0-2. They haven't started out 0-2 since 2015. They've never made the playoffs being starting off 0-2. So keep that in mind. Next 3 games at Dallas, home to Buffalo, at Cincinnati. Then the schedule softens up a bit, but that is, that's going to I'm not going to say that's going to be their season, but that they could be in a ditch after following that three game run. I mean, they could be staring at 1-4. They're not going to be 0-5, but they could easily be staring at 1-4. Now, they win 2 out of 3. Now you're talking, 2-3, and you're okay. But, they're not going to be 0-5. But 1-4, I mean, 1-4 is on the table for Baltimore. Again, the Kansas City loss, I get it. Opening night, it's Kansas City on the road. But this one was like a head scratcher. Like this one, I just didn't understand at all. Did not understand this loss from Baltimore. I think Baltimore is still trying to find who they are within, from an offensive standpoint, from an identity standpoint. I still don't think they figured out who they are, despite the fact that it should be apparent kind of who they are. We having Lamar Jackson as your quarterback, but again, I told you last week, 16 rushes was too many for Lamar Jackson. So now you go from 16 down to 5. You give Derrick Henry gets more burn. He gets 18 carries. So it's like, again, I don't know. I don't know what this offense is from an identity standpoint. I still think they're trying to obviously figure that out. Tampa Bay gets a little bit of revenge on Detroit, 2016. Remember, Detroit took them out in the playoffs last year in a very competitive game, a game that easily could have went Tampa Bay's way. This is a game that Detroit, you just frankly going to kick yourself. You outgained Tampa Bay 463 to 216. But again, there's a couple of key stats. Number one, Detroit was 1 for 7 in the red zone, which will get you beat 99, 98 out of 100 times. Then the one that it was even more just confusing was the idea that you allowed Jared Goff to throw the ball 55 times. Jared Goff in this game threw the ball 56 times. Excuse me. They threw the ball 56 times and ran the ball 27 times. They have the best offensive line in football. You are at home. You can run the ball against Tampa Bay. They've always been susceptible to that. Even when they've had excellent defenses, they've been like against this defense. You can run the ball against this defense. Period. Now, maybe not their Super Bowl year that they went with Tom Brady, but recently you can run the ball against Tampa Bay. You can run the ball against this Tampa Bay defense. And they had 27 carries, 139 yards rushing. They should have had 200 yards rushing in this game. This game was close throughout. It wasn't like Detroit was trailing by more than one score ever in the game. They were never trailing by more than one score ever in the game. This game is strictly on the coaches. This is on the play calling. Like, there's no way I'm throwing the ball with Jared Goff ever 56 times unless I'm down, 24-0 or something like that. But in a nip tuck game like this, to throw the ball 56 times with Jared Goff is insane. Like, it really is. And Goff, was bad. He had 2 interceptions, only 34, 55, and he barely cracked 300 yards. Despite throwing the ball 56 times, barely 55 times, he barely cracked 300 yards. So it's not like you were getting a lot of bang for your buck with the passes. So just, I'm not going to go too crazy. Tampa Bay is a solid team. They know Detroit obviously well from last year. This is, these two teams could be in the playoffs again. So I'm not going to. It's a tough loss. I'm not going to say it's definitely not a bad loss, but This one definitely they should not have lost this game. Like you don't outgain a team. They don't, like I said, the Bucks did next to nothing offensively. Like the Bucks, like you're talking about Baker Mayfield. Mayfield only had 185 yards, touchdown, interception. Uh, Baker Mayfield was their leading rusher with 34 yards. So that's one of those losses that I'm sure Detroit will fall away and definitely would probably want another crack at Tampa in the postseason. So the deep dive, we don't have the deep dive on the visual, but the deep dive for for this podcast is bad quarterbacking. Um, you saw Bryce Young get benched. Um, we've seen teams just mishandle quarterbacking over the course of NFL history, and we're seeing it in Carolina, and I think, and we're going to see it more likely in Chicago. So, do a little research. Let me give you some names here. I'm sure you'll be familiar with them. Joe Montana, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes. You know what all those guys had in common? None of them played their first year. All of them sat at least 1 year. In some cases, Tom Brady sat 2 years with Andrew Bledsoe before he played after Bledsoe got hurt in the 2001 season. Okay. So you can't tell me that it hurts a quarterback to sit 1 year at least. I'm looking at this Bryce Young situation. Everybody's ripping on Bryce Young. Bryce Young ain't this, he ain't that. You know, is he one of the worst quarterback busts in what number one picks in recent memory? And blah blah blah. The bottom line is Bryce Young does not have a chance with this franchise. Carolina, in the last 5 years, you know how many offensive linemen they've taken in the last 5 years in the first 2 rounds of the draft? One. They've taken one offensive lineman in the first 2 rounds of the draft. They haven't taken an offensive lineman in the first 2 rounds since 2019, before the pandemic. Okay. Bryce Young last year was sacked 62 times. Does not have a chance with that roster. Like I said, they are doing what Houston did with David Carr back in the day. What happened with Andrew Luck in Indianapolis. The guy just gets his brains beaten to a point to where he just can't play no more, mentally or physically, if not both. We saw it happen mentally for David Carr. We saw it happen physically for Andrew Young, who was well on his way to a Hall of Fame career. Andrew Luck would have been an all-time great without question. And I think a guy that would have won a Super Bowl or two, possibly. He was that guy. He was that great. He was on his way to being that level of player. If you go look back at his win-loss record, go look back at where their franchise was at. And Indianapolis ruined him. They ruined him because he took a just insane amount of punishment. And, his family took a lot of slack for this, but, way back when in 2004, you had Archie Manning basically being, the puppet master for making sure that that Eli ended up with the Giants instead of the Chargers. You know why Archie Manning did that? Because Archie Manning was once a all-time great quarterback in college, great college quarterback, and got the shit beat out of him when he got to the NFL. The shit kicked out of him. Was on some horrible teams. Go look at his win-loss record was horrible, but he was a 1978 NFC Player of the Year and a 2-time Pro Bowler. He could play. This is why he was not a bust. This guy could play. He was just in a horrible situation. So trust me, he had that, entrenched in his mind and said, look, this was before San Diego was building a very talented roster that would be one of the more talented rosters for about a 2 or 3 year period from, let's say, 05 to 08. This is before that. This was before that. Archie was like, nah, You go into a franchise that has won a couple of Super Bowls, and guess what? Say what you want, it turned out to be the right move because the Giants won 2 Super Bowls with Eli Manning. Eli Manning is a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. So it turned out it actually turned out to be the right move in hindsight. But these quarterbacks, like these franchises, seemingly they are actually worse at developing a quarterback than they are at drafting. I don't know which they might be worse at developing or handling a quarterback. Again, I don't like the fact that Jaden Daniels, as a Washington Commanders fan, is playing right now. Okay. One of the best things that happened to Bryce Young is for him to get benched. They actually are doing him a favor. Caleb Williams, again, he's going to get the shit kicked out of him. It's going to happen this year with that offense. It just is. Sit these guys for a year and, go move on to year 2. It's just that simple. There are very few guys that can play right away, that can play like right away. CJ Stroud is an exception. Cam Newton was an exception. Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, these guys are few and far between. Like I said, a guy who's on pace to possibly be the greatest quarterback in the history of the league, Patrick Mahomes, sat a year under Alex Smith. Like he sat an entire year. Played the last game of the season, but basically sat an entire year. That was by design. So we're gonna see again. We're gonna see this guy. Bryce Young is gonna get ruined by this horrible franchise, and y'all are gonna blame Bryce Young. It's not the case. It's the franchise, and again, a bunch of these franchises keep making the same mistake over and over again, despite the fact that you have evidence of success when the guy sits a year. So we'll see what happens with those 2 quarterbacks in terms of Bryce Young and also Caleb Williams. Who won the week? This one was a pretty easy one for me. Not only did he win the week, he's probably winning the year right now, and that's Kendrick Lamar. So I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone with this one. A lot of talk with the Super Bowl halftime choice that Jay-Z made in choosing Kendrick Lamar over Lil Wayne. And, Wayne was obviously devastated. In his words, he was broken. He had Nicki Minaj. This too shall pass. Like it was like somebody died or something. You had just, New Orleans stand up and basically, stand up for that guy. Lil Wayne, we all know is a legend, iconic rapper, performer. At worst, in my mind, a top 10 rapper of all time, if not higher. I probably have him in that 7 to 10 range. But his stature is set in stone. We know what Lil Wayne has meant to the culture. But I'll be honest with you, this probably was one of the easiest decisions that Jay-Z has ever made in his life as someone in charge, whether he's president of Def Jam, Rockefeller, whatever. In terms of as a leader, this is probably one of the easiest decisions that he's ever made. It's Kendrick Lamar. It's Kendrick motherfucking Lamar. Like, what are we talking about here? You think that I'm going to pass up on Kendrick Lamar in terms of the year he's having? I want to pass up on the Kendrick Lamar on the Kendrick Lamar wave? Like, are you kidding me? Like, what? I would have been shocked if Kendrick Lamar was not chosen. Like, what? That would have been a story. Not that he was chosen. If he wasn't chosen, again, I'm not a Jay-Z fanatic. I'm definitely not a Jay-Z stan. I respect Jay-Z as one of the 2 greatest rappers of all time and everything he's done for the culture. But I've had some issues with Jay-Z in terms of how he's moved basically since he became a billionaire. And, the Kaepernick situation in terms of that, how he's moving in bed with the NFL. So I've had some issues with Jay-Z, but this ain't one of them. Like, I gotta be honest with you. This one, I would have made the same decision and wouldn't even thought twice about making that decision. And by the way, I'm not one who thinks that Wayne is going to get it, would have been a liability as a performer. I think Wayne would have destroyed the show. in a good way in New Orleans. His hometown. I mean, he's not gonna get up there and embarrass himself. He has way too much pride for that. I think he went through a hell of a show without question. But ultimately, it's Kendrick Lamar. Like this, that's it. Like it's pretty simple to easy and a very simple decision to me. Here's what I will say: hip hop can be so hypocritical at times in terms of the selective outrage. Last year, one of the most important years in all of hip hop history, the 50th anniversary of hip hop, Jay-Z didn't participate in any of what was going on as far as celebrating hip hop as a whole. No one, not Nicki Minaj, not any New York rapper, no one in the hip hop community active said anything. I didn't hear no one say anything about Jay-Z in terms of criticizing Jay-Z. If there was any time to criticize Jay-Z, that was the time. Not right now. Not for this. So, selective outrage. You want to ride for your guy. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we don't. I heard Nicki. You hear Nicki Minaj. Obviously, he was tight with Wayne and the Cash Money crew and that whole deal with Drake. I get that, but he's been getting his flowers for the last decade. Like we don't need to have to give Wayne a performance to recognize like how great he's been or what he means to culture. It would have been a great show, but Kendrick Lamar is Kendrick Lamar. I mean, that's is what it is. So Kendrick Lamar wins the week, and he hasn't even came out with an album yet. So when he comes out, if he drops for the year end, then he will put a nail in the coffin of basically winning 2024 for that matter. Biggest disappointment, Shannon Sharpe. The story obviously is about a week old, close to being a week old, but it came out last week. Shannon Sharpe, it was audio of Shannon Sharpe having sex with a woman on his IG Live. At first, reports, rumors, what have you. He claims he was hacked. Then later on, he copped to it, did a whole podcast in terms of emergency Shay Shay Live with Ocho Cinco. That was about an hour and 45 minutes. I watched the majority of it, at least well over an hour. I got to just watch the majority of it. Saw as much as I needed to see, and was disappointed. No pun intended, to say the least, from a standpoint of it was just unnecessary to me. You're talking about a guy in Shannon Sharpe who is, in conversation in terms of media personalities, sports media personalities. He's winning 2024. Like Club Shay Shay Nightcap, he's killing it. Like you have advertisers fighting tooth and nail to try to get on those shows, to say the least. He's got millions of subscribers. He has his career. He's at the peak of his powers as far as his career. His career, it's good. It's great to be, from a professional standpoint. It is great to be Shannon Sharpe right now, and it's interesting with this addiction of attention and the drug that attention can bring. Because number one, let's get a couple things out. There have been gay rumors about Shannon Sharpe on the internet and stuff like that. We don't know if there's any truth with it. Who cares? But that narrative that's not anything new. Also, you find out that he went hard as far as promotion, Nightclap and all these shirts and what have you, and this sex pill and stuff that he's promoting. So again, he made some money from this. But again, from a standpoint of, for an alleged private person, it really didn't make any sense to put this out here. And if you buy the fact that this was not leaked by him, then I don't know what to tell you. Like you can't butt dial an IG Live. There's a process in doing IG Live. I called bullshit when I first heard it. I was like, nah, this wasn't This was no accident. This just wasn't. So that again, I don't understand it. I don't know why if you're Shannon Sharpe, you give a shit what anybody says about you, considering how successful you are and will continue to be. 56 years old, come off immature is not even, is an understatement. Just immature, unnecessary. It's like, and kind of greedy, to be honest with you. Like, again, dude, your show is pulling millions. Like the Nightcap is a great show. I enjoyed the Nightcap with him. Him and Ocho Cinco have excellent, great chemistry. It's entertaining. It's hilarious. It's informative. So if you're for a sports part, they give you the nuts and bolts in terms of sports. You getting two professional athletes who are both great players at one point. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to like about Nightcap. I don't rock the club Shay as much in terms of the interview, but I understand. I was got to give him credit for that in terms of how successful it has been. But Nightcap is the one to me that stands out. This was unnecessary, and there's no defending Shannon Sharpe. And by the way, I don't think he should have been remotely fired by ESPN. Like, this is completely different than Paul Pierce. Y'all want to bring up Paul Pierce? Paul Pierce was wilding with that video of with purposely going on IG and with the strippers. He was wilding. Like, come on, and Paul Pierce, you gotta understand, you clearly misjudged your value to the company, value to ESPN, thinking that you could get away with that. So that was just a miscalculation on his part. That's completely his fault. So I don't compare the two situations, to be perfectly honest with you. Again, Paul Pierce was, when I mean wilding on that video, if you go back and look at it. So this is different to me. And again, if I was ESPN, I wouldn't have pulled the plug on him. But I'm a little bit surprised that Shannon Sharpe would pull this. I feel the need to pull this, considering how successful he has been. And, this is some shit that failed actors or struggling actors would do to try to jump up some attention. It's like, my career is struggling, so I got to get some traction somehow. If you're Shannon Sharpe, you're actually flourishing. Extremely unnecessary, to say the least. Just one real thought. Tua Tagovailoa suffers another concussion. Just very difficult to watch against Buffalo as Miami got destroyed in a Thursday night game. In the Thursday night game last week, but that obviously was not the story. Tua has 4 diagnosed concussions in 5 years, 1 at Alabama, 3 in the NFL. Probably has more. One of them was not diagnosed, but it was clearly a concussion. So really 5 in 5 years, to be perfectly honest with you. Obviously, he's been placed on IR. Will be out at minimum the next 4 games. I wish I could say that he should be out for the rest of the season, but knowing Miami with their history of bringing him back and him wanting to play, more than likely he's probably going to be back before this season is over with. This is a tough one for me. This is a tough one because from the outside, it's easy to sit there and say this guy should retire. Like, how many hits you want this dude to be able, if he has kids, I don't know if he has kids, but if he does so choose to, you want him to be able to hold his children, to be able to speak, to walk, to be able to live a regular life. Once his football days are long gone, he'll be out of football longer than he's been in football. Hopefully. But when you've been doing something since you were probably a little boy, and it's like it's been the main thing in your life. We just talked about being addicted to something, addicted to fame. Well, these athletes are addicted to their particular sports, especially when you get to the level to where you just signed a $212 million extension and get to a level 2 where Tua was, a great quarterback in college and was top 5 quarterback drafted in the pros. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it's something that you just don't walk away from it, even with the risk that comes with it. I remember any given Sunday, and James Woods James Woods got into it with Al Pacino. Remember, he had he had overlooked Lawrence Taylor's injuries and put it back on the field, and Al Pacino basically snapped on him, saying, he could have been killed. And James Woods basically was like, look, these are gladiators. They made that choice a long time ago. It's not for us to make it. Like, they will not live in shame like you. He says they made that choice. Period. So it's almost accepted that, hey, they could possibly not be able to walk again, or maybe they'll possibly even die on the field. Like that's and like those guys, you play football, you don't expect it, but go ask Damar Hamlin, who ironically made the tackle, was a part of the tackle on Tua on last Thursday. Like, this dude almost basically had a cardiac arrest on the field 2 years ago. Almost died. He literally almost died. Thank God, Buffalo and the paramedics, excuse me, that was in Cincinnati. The paramedics saved his life. But these guys make those choices, especially at professional football. It's a violent sport. And hard to tell a guy to walk away. Like, you hear for every Antonio Pierce says, I think he should retire. You'll hear Teddy Bruschi and a number of other players say, it's his choice. I don't know what the right answer is, to be honest with you, because I don't have all the medical information. We got what's on the surface. He's had a lot of concussions in a short period of time. And I don't see it getting any better as he takes more hits. So, but I can't. That's a decision that, you consult with your family. The organization, with the NFL, the organization, trust me, coach included, owner, everybody, they're going to do everything possible to try to make sure that he gets back on the field. I promise you. You're never going to hear an organization. I've yet to ever hear an organization say, you know what, hey man, we care about you. We think that you should move along. Like, it's your decision, but there's no shame in walking away. You'd never hear that out of an NFL organization. Ever. Ever. And that's just the way it is. But it's not as clear cut as one may think when it comes to something like this. This is a life altering choice that he's going to have to make at some point. So we'll see what happens. Me personally, I hope he never plays football again, to be honest with you. But, that's me. He has to make that decision, and ultimately has to make that choice. That's going to wrap it up in this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. This podcast will be up tomorrow. Podcast will be up tomorrow morning. Have a great rest of your week. So long.